SoCal Connected is made possible through the generous support of the Amundsen Foundation, serving the Los Angeles community since 1952. On tonight's SoCal Connected, who approved that?
I used to be able to see the sunsets. I used to be able to get sun into my backyard. I've lost the use of my backyard.
Does affordable housing mean the end of the single-family home?
So if the middle class can't afford to live in the city, ultimately the city loses out and becomes a shell of what a diverse city should be.
The oil fields next door gave her health problems.
I had frequent nosebleeds, frequent stomach pains, frequent headaches.
And turned this teenager into a warrior for clean air. Maybe to you, it's just dirt.
Oh, it's so fresh.
But on this farm, it's everything.
Soil is the grand alchemizer. It turns the dead things back into life.
Hello, I'm Val Zavala. If you live or work in Los Angeles, chances are you've seen housing and retail developments popping up all over the place. And some of them have you asking, who approved that? Many of them pit old neighborhoods against the future of Los Angeles. It could be the single-family home is a thing of the past.
Steve Windmiller says he has no problem with more apartments in Los Angeles. He just doesn't want them all built right in his backyard. For decades, he's lived in this close-knit Westchester suburb of single-family homes, built just after World War II. Now, a new neighbor has changed everything. This development has literally stolen the sunshine and much of what Steve and his neighbors once loved about living here.
I used to be able to see the sunsets. I used to be able to get sun into my backyard by my pool. I've lost the use of my backyard. People all the time stop and look at it, and they ask me, they say, what is that? How did that get there?
I'm practicing anger management techniques daily. And I joke about that, but yeah, it's stress.
These neighbors used to live next to a church and a school campus. Now it's a 100-unit apartment building, and it keeps going up and up and up, 5 stories high. So just how did this happen?
I don't know if it was backroom deals, but it was kind of just a check, check, check. You went through the process. Okay, yeah, you're approved.
The approval process starts at the City Planning Department, which oversees zoning rules. Then it heads to the Planning Commission. But the City Council and the mayor have final say. Now, more and more LA residents are asking, who approved that? As small family homes give way to massive apartment buildings.
And they said they would be there for us. They weren't. Why do we have people that represent us that have no say, that can't fight for us, that can't do anything for us?
Westchester isn't the only area where giant buildings are dwarfing neighborhoods. Some parts of LA look just like a scene from the movie Up. And homeowners aren't the only ones who are voicing discontent with LA's vertical creep.
It's a little disconcerting to feel occupied.
Renters like these, who live in Hollywood's Yucca Argyle apartments near the Capitol Records building, are fighting plans to tear down their rent-controlled apartments.
Why are we driving out people that help build the community in the name of, urban renewal?
People are leaving California. People are leaving LA because they can't afford it. And it's because of these developments.
The day after our interview, the developer sent them a notice saying their buildings would be razed, but that current tenants would also be guaranteed comparable rent-controlled apartments in a new building. Still, they say it's a huge loss.
This is
Classic Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yep, classic Hollywood.
And they want it to be what's behind us here.
And then this one over here. And over here, you're going to see another high-rise, it looks like.
Yes. They're slowly sort of erasing, a lot of the historic quality and the things about Hollywood that make it unique.
We've worked with a lot of garden apartment complexes, with bungalow courts, is some of these are designed to really promote community. And that's something that I don't know that people think about as much now.
Most everyone we talk to agrees it's time to put the planning back into city planning in LA. But preserving the past while moving into the future won't be easy.
We have a political process and a planning process that was created in the early 20th century. I think that the process actually is largely outdated and isn't as fast, isn't as creative as what we need to really address the underlying problems facing the city.
Mike Wu is a former LA City Council member and a past president of the Planning Commission. Now he inspires students to innovate as the Dean of Environmental Design at Cal Poly Pomona.
If a city allows affordable units to be lost, it really transforms what a city is like. The middle classes really add a lot to the stability of a city. And so if the middle class can't afford to live in the city, ultimately the city loses out and becomes a shell of what a diverse, heterogeneous city should be.
Many neighborhood groups voicing opposition to large developments next to their homes are frustrated by changes they say are indiscriminate and poorly planned. Critics call them NIMBYs, short for not in my backyard. Now there's a generation of residents, those who shout, yes in my backyard, or YIMBYs, who enthusiastically push for more housing, even if that means high-rises in single-family neighborhoods.
I'm not trying to tell you that you can't live in a house. I'm just asking you not to tell me that I can't live in an apartment.
YIMBYs tend to be millennials who rent rather than own, and they're hungry for housing near metro stops, restaurants, and businesses.
You want to put housing in places where people can live without cars, and it's easier for them to get around.
A new planning project called Recode LA is already working to overhaul LA's zoning codes. They're holding hearings like this one near the Wilshire corridor to consider new housing zones along transit lines. Most of the people we met here, including local homeowners, support more high-density housing.
We look at as many strategies as we can. This is the stage where we like to hear from the communities, and their input is very valuable to our process.
I'm all for having denser housing along Wilshire, as close to the purple line as you can get. I want more towers around Wilshire. There's a lot of parking lots that could be redeveloped, a lot of single-use, really low-rise buildings that could be redeveloped.
At UCLA's City Lab, Professor Kevin Daly has asked students to design creative ways to increase housing.
City Lab recognized that there was another solution, which is building additional units in existing single-family house backyards.
The extra housing, they say, could boost available units without dominating neighborhoods.
Every single person you talk to has a slightly different narrative. They want to rent it. They have a kid who's moving back. They are getting older. They want to move into it and rent their house. And so there's a huge range of scenarios.
UCLA's City Lab also helped pass statewide legislation easing restrictions on backyard units. YIMBYs applaud that approach.
I think there are currently too many restrictions on the types of projects we build. We want mixed income neighborhoods, not neighborhoods just for the rich.
But whether any of this would provide affordable housing, LA's biggest challenge, is still up for debate. It seems where there's a solution, there's also another problem.
When there's a big housing shortage, what happens is people build housing and they build the most expensive housing they can build.
And that in turn often accelerates unwelcome changes to the city's long-standing neighborhoods.
People are starting to really care about their historic resources and they want a way to save them.
LA's Koreatown is one neighborhood where discontent has leaked into the political and social climate.
We want to be able to keep a little bit of our history, be it Boyle Heights, be it Chinatown. When you have residents who are no longer able to stay where they've grown up, it is causing great consternation to not just the individual, but entire ripples of communities.
In a shocker, Koreatown elected outsider David Rue to the LA City Council in 2015. He won on a wave of anti-development sentiments. A survey by the LA Times found that despite pushback from residents, city officials approved 90% of zoning changes requested by developers citywide during the past 17 years. The Westchester residents outraged by the high-rise apartments in their backyard are also becoming increasingly political, supporting a recall campaign to oust their city councilman, Mike Bonin.
After over a year or more of talking with city people, meeting with Councilman Mike Bonin and stuff like that, you know, we've just found out that they don't really support us.
But Bonin represents not just Westchester. He also oversees other areas of West Los Angeles now undergoing rapid growth, including Playa Vista's Silicon Beach and other coastal communities where housing shortages are highest. And the growth of tech and innovation industries now happening here only worsens housing shortages.
It's creating demand for housing from workers who want to not have to commute a long distance, and that results in the development pressure.
Do you think that that's a pressure to kind of create this housing in that area?
This is not a surprise. Nobody should be surprised this happened.
It's also pressure that continues to boost housing prices, building heights, and even developments near freeways where pollution levels are high. These units, like those in nearby Westchester, are built for the huge influx of tech employees working nearby.
There's a real recognition that we're a growing city and we have to continue to find ways to accommodate the population.
Signaling that suburban sprawl of yesterday is giving way to growth in an entirely different direction.
About 1 in 3 Angelenos lives near an active oil rig. Many of the rigs are hidden from sight, but their health effects are not. People in these communities experience heart problems, asthma, nosebleeds. Well, we met one young activist who is taking on these oil giants with a very potent weapon, her voice.
I believe clean air is a basic human right and that everybody should have it. I don't believe oil wells belong in a community. Nobody knows my community story the way my community knows it.
South Los Angeles is a neighborhood where people fight for survival with multiple jobs. And in this part of LA, a young girl and her mother also help fight for the very air they all breathe.
To see Nayeli very active on this makes me so proud.
16-year-old Nayeli Cobo has been a warrior for clean air since she was 9. Living across the street from active oil wells with toxic fumes, Nayeli and her neighbors would get sicker by the day.
But around the age of 9, I did start experiencing a lot of health symptoms, such as heart palpitations, and I had to use a heart monitor for several weeks. I had frequent nosebleeds, frequent stomach pains, frequent headaches.
It doesn't look like much from here, but that small parcel of land hides 21 underground wells operated by the Alanco Oil Company. Nayeli and her mom, Monique Uriete, were once told by a worker there that wells had to be checked every few minutes to keep them from exploding.
We were basically popcorn, and as soon as you hit the microwave button, they all start popping, and I said that that's what could happen to our community if they're not paying attention.
The community organized to stop Alanco's drilling operations, starting a grassroots group called People Not Pozos, meaning people, not wells. Nayeli stood out as a small child with a strong voice, but she gives all credit to her neighbors.
Some of these people are immigrants, and they work day to day to provide food on the table, to have a roof over their families' homes. And after those long days, they would come home and go door to door knocking with us to let people know that we were living next to an oil well.
Nayeli has fueled her activism by also studying oil drilling, air pollution, attending city council meetings and rallies. It's brought celebrity attention to a community that often feels forgotten. By 2013, Senator Barbara Boxer helped the community suspend Alanco's operations pending investigations. Then the LA City Attorney imposed tougher restrictions before Alanco could restart drilling. That possibility has the community scared and still fighting.
There was day-to-day fear that they would reopen and that we wouldn't be able to open our windows anymore, or that we couldn't go play outside because of the air.
The Murphy facility in LA, operated by Sentinel Peak Resources, also stands in the midst of a low-income residential area. Both the Murphy and Alanco sites are owned by the Catholic Archdiocese of Los Angeles, which leases the land to oil companies.
I feel that sometimes they're choosing money over people, over people's health, and I think that sometimes they are being hypocritical, and I don't think that's right.
Nayeli calls it the other industry they're fighting. The community sent several letters to the Archdiocese without any response. Nayeli took it to the top.
Hello, Pope Francis. My name is Nayeli Cobo. I live across the street from the Alenco oil plant, which is next to Mount St. Mary's College, and we feel this is what is making us sick.
Alenco refused to take our calls, and after declining our requests for interviews, the Archdiocese provided us with a statement saying they're continuing to work with the mayor's office, the petroleum administrator for the city of Los Angeles, and Alenco to explore all possible uses for the site. Notably absent from that list, members of this community.
And that is very disrespectful since we are the people in the community that attend the church.
It's clear how insignificant we are for them. And shame on them.
People Not Pozos has joined a coalition of other community groups called Stand LA, who've come together to end urban drilling. Nayeli, I heard you talking about environmental justice. What exactly does that mean to you coming from South LA?
When they open wells in Beverly Hills or wealthier neighborhoods, they make sure they operate from business hours like 9 to 5. They make sure that they're silent drills and that they have special filters put up on the walls. And when they open them in Wilmington or in South LA, they don't care if they're loud. They don't care if they operate 24/7 or not. They don't care if they put up filters for us because to them we're just a minority.
Does it feel sometimes like it's David versus Goliath for you guys?
As a woman of faith, I know how ends this story, and I'm happy to be the little one on this battle.
I believe everyone has the right to breathe clean air despite their age, gender, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status.
Nayeli recently won a Youth Leadership Award from South Coast Air Quality Management District.
Clean air is something we should all have from the start, and it's time people receive it. Thank you.
How important is it to get people your age involved?
I think that the youth standing up and making a change within their communities and ultimately in the world is so important. Like, I know that it's hard because I thought that, well, I'm just a 9-year-old girl. What are people gonna do? Like, I don't know if they're gonna listen to me. But the truth is, people do listen to you so much more because we're the future, we're the next generation. I think it's time that we stand up and defend our generation for our kids.
The soil beneath us is like the skin on our planet. Unfortunately, it's been eroded, depleted, and damaged. But we found one amazing place where the soil is getting completely rejuvenated. It's like a little Eden. Swirling orchards of lemons, avocados, apricots, and dozens of other fruit trees, and rows of organic vegetables. Sheep and lambs just a couple weeks old. Pigs being pigs. A few cattle and more than a few chickens roaming free. This is Apricot Lane Farms near Moore Park, about an hour north of Los Angeles. John Chester and his wife Molly are the owners.
We grow about 80 different types of orchard trees.
80?
Wow. And about 100 different types of vegetable crops.
A couple hundred acres of mainly orchards, cultivated with no pesticides, no insecticides, no herbicides. But this farm goes beyond organic. It's aligned with the dynamics of nature. For example, when the cover crops in the orchard get too tall, these guys will take care of it in a day, leaving something behind as natural fertilizer. And the chickens are about more than eggs.
Well, the chickens do a number of things. They help to keep our fly population down. They help to break up the manure piles that are out there that are left behind and scatter that around.
But the most important asset of this farm is not the animals, or the vegetables, or even the orchards. It's this, the soil.
And you can see all the different sort of root structure and worms and little bugs and the porosity of this soil. And you can smell it. That's the most important thing.
Oh, that's so fresh.
Yeah, it's all about the soil, because ultimately the soil is the grand alchemizer. It turns the dead things back into live things. And it does it in the most healthy way that is so complex that soil scientists even don't fully understand the complexities.
Apricot Lane Farms has turned hard, dry dirt into some of the richest soil in California.
The most important thing to us in building healthy soil is organic matter. And organic matter is this little plant right here and the roots of that plant. This leaf, this broken stick. When you're talking about building soil, like right here, as this cover crop lays down on top of the soil, you can see what's starting to happen.
Oh, it's a whole net of organic material.
And so this is the trampled by the sheep, say, 3 months ago. And then
Really? Sheep were here?
Yeah, 3 months ago. And then this is the grass that was trampled by the sheep 6 months ago. Wow. And you can see it's turned back into dirt, or more importantly, soil.
Wow.
And that's how soil's built. It's built from the top.
Organic.
From the top down, from this stuff. That's what we want.
It's called regenerative farming.
We're farming in a way that allows the system to regenerate itself. And I think that that's a long-term goal.
Since industrial agriculture began in the 50s, our soil has been steadily and dramatically depleted. It's overplowed and not allowed to replenish itself. With natural nutrients lost, the soil has to be drenched with man-made fertilizers and pesticides. Scientists have found that our fruits and vegetables contain fewer nutrients today than they did a few decades ago. And they warn our depleted and eroded soil will not be able to produce enough food for a growing world population unless we start allowing our soil to recover and replenish itself. And that's what they do here.
Our goal here is to eventually have a self-contained ecosystem that does not require us to bring in outside inputs in order to grow food.
The difference is visible. Look at these orchards. The ground is full of wildflowers, grasses, even weeds. Compared to this, the familiar orchard with nothing but bare ground between the trees.
Everything here is being grown with a purpose. We grow legumes to cycle nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen out of the atmosphere. That's free nitrogen fertilizer for us. And then if you're going to have bees, you got to have things to feed the bees. And so, having pollinator food is really, really important. When some people come out here who run orchards that run them in maybe a more conventional way, they think this looks like neglect, but this is the idea of how you build soil.
Another difference, many big farms use monoculture, growing a single crop over hundreds of acres. Here, those 80 different kinds of fruits and vegetables, they're all grown on only 213 acres. The result? An ecosystem interwoven with diversity. As if all this weren't enough, rich, healthy soil does something else. It can actually help with one of the biggest ecological challenges facing our planet, global warming. To understand how soil can do this, I visited UC Irvine's Arboretum. That's where I met Stephen Allison, a professor of Earth System Science.
And if you look deeper down, then we start to see different structure to the soil. The surface of the soil, we find more organic material, so we've got these decaying or decomposing pieces of organic matter, and as they break down this dead plant material, it adds carbon to the soil as it decomposes.
It works like this. During photosynthesis, plants draw carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, out of the air. The carbon helps the plant grow and bloom, and if the natural cycle continues, the plant will die and decay and become part of the soil. That carbon will also go into the soil, and if it's undisturbed, the soil can store it for hundreds, even thousands of years. More carbon in the ground means less carbon dioxide in our atmosphere.
The soils down here maybe have carbon that's 100 to 200 years old.
But when we till or plow the soil, all that carbon is released back into the atmosphere, where it contributes to global warming.
So a way that we can prevent runaway climate change is to store more of that carbon in the soil. Smarter soil management should be a priority, I think, in that because of the multiple benefits that it can have for society and farmers and climate advocates. That should be the goal, I think, in farming, and Now that we have this knowledge, I think that that's potentially the future of farming in our country and more broadly in the world.
So why do we still farm the way we do? Because industrial farming feeds billions of people across the globe cheaply.
The problem with food being cheap is that it comes at the expense of something. And in this case, it's come at the expense of the soil. And if you look at soil as sort of a bank, in order to create cheap food, we've depleted that bank.
But John isn't blaming conventional farmers. He says they're fulfilling market demand.
It's really important not to put the responsibility on conventional farmers because they are responding to the consumer's desire to pay $2 for a dozen eggs.
He says consumers, not farmers, can be the best agents of change.
If we want food grown in a healthy way that also sort of takes into consideration the needs of an ecosystem, we have to be willing to pay a little bit more for food. There's no getting around that.
Produce from Apricot Lane Farms is more expensive, and John realizes not everyone can afford a $3 avocado. Still, demand for their produce is high, and every season they sell out.
We're starting to realize the connection between ecosystems and farms. And it has to be cared for in ways beyond just the label of organic.
This kind of farming isn't easy. There's endless work for the crew and plenty of problems to solve. But John and Molly are in it for the long haul, creating a farm that will flourish for themselves and the next generation that's already here. And that's our program for tonight. Don't forget you can see all our stories online at SoCalConnected.org and on Facebook. I'm Val Zavala. We'll see you next time.